Radio app. Evenings with Kevin O'Sullivan on Talk Radio.
Yes, it is today indeed a day of shame for the police, and not just because of the shoddy way it failed to spot that Wayne Couzens was, to say the least, a wrong 'un. The man was done for, or was caught indecently exposing himself in 2015. He had a record of extreme cruelty to animals, always an alert in the life of a psychopath, and also he was known as a nickname by his colleagues because he made women so uncomfortable. He was called the rapist, and yet he carried on serving as an officer for 6 years after that, a career that ended when he was caught after abducting, raping and killing Sarah Everard. Now, there is another cause for shame for the police force as well, and that is the lethargy with which they proceeded after Sarah was reported missing. Joining me now is an old colleague of mine, Rob McGibbon, and he's launched a campaign to change the way the police react to disappearing people, to missing persons, especially if they're women. Good evening, Rob.
Good evening, Kevin.
Can you bear with us, Rob? We're going to just play Cressida Dick's abject apology today, and then we'll come back to you.
Sarah's kidnap, rape and murder was one of the most dreadful events in the 190-year history of the Metropolitan Police Service. I am absolutely horrified that this man used his position of trust to deceive and coerce Sarah. His actions were a gross betrayal of everything policing stands for. I am absolutely sickened. There are no words that can fully express the fury and overwhelming sadness that we all feel about what happened to Sarah. I am so sorry.
Someone shouting will resign then, and I think there's a good cause to shout that there, Rob. Now, you've spotted something else for which she should be very sorry, and when you sent me an email today, I was shocked. Sarah went missing on the 3rd of March at 9:34 p.m. We now know what happened to her. We saw those haunting pictures of Wayne Couzens sort of semi-arresting her. Her boyfriend reported her missing at 8:10 p.m. on the 4th, so that's basically a day later. The first police tweet, that's their first response, was to tweet, was posted at 10:30 a.m. on the 5th, so that's 14 hours after she was reported missing by her boyfriend. Posters were made upon search, but as you quite rightly say, why was a full-scale 21st century media campaign not instigated immediately? 14 hours they took to do anything about her boyfriend reporting that Sarah Everard had gone missing. That's a scandal, isn't it?
It is a scandal. You used the word lethargy earlier, and I think that's probably a little bit strong. Because a huge amount was done in the subsequent days, but it struck me at the time, because I only live sort of 3 miles from Clapham where it all happened. I'm very familiar with the area, and yet I wasn't aware of the story until the Saturday when a friend at a football match told me about it. I couldn't believe that a journalist, I'm across all the newspapers and the websites. I wasn't aware of it. It was vaguely in my local area. And I looked into it at the time, and I came across the tweet from Lambeth Police, which had gone out on the Thursday, the Friday at 10:30. It went out to 50,000 followers at the Lambeth Police Central South account. And as you know, that is a whisper in the wind in terms of Twitter, 50,000 followers. And I want to know what else was done in those early hours.
Well, those 14 hours. I mean, as you
what happened overnight? What were they doing? Were they preparing a strategy? What were they actually doing? Because there was no real traction in the story on the national media for a couple of days. Then we got into the realm of making posters, and the ponds on Clapham were being searched. Why wasn't it on all the national websites, on all the big major platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Nextdoor, all those sort of things? Now, I've been looking into this, and there's a document published in 2005 by the National Centre for Policing Excellence, and it's on the guidance for the management and recording and investigation of missing persons. Now, this apparently is the document that a lot of police work is done when someone goes missing. And it is a very complex situation. Most people turn up, people are runaways that come back, they do it regularly. So there's a lot of information in this document. And part of the media section, it said that other types of communication, posters, internet, that is the only reference to all the World Wide Web. There's nothing about Facebook, Twitter, social media platforms. So if this is what they're still going on.
It's an analog system that you're talking about there, aren't you?
It is, in terms of media, 2005 is the dark ages. It's the dark ages. So now that the sentencing is complete and the case is sort of closed, I think there's a time now to really look at the media strategy in a similar situation. Something has to be different. I'm going to be writing to Martin Hewitt, who's the chairman of the National Police Chief Council. He's the guy that should be able to at least order a review. Now, the thing is, Kevin, you've worked in the media for 30 odd years. We know that once you get something high up on the agenda, then newspapers, they get behind it, everyone pulls together. And what could be simpler now than to get websites and social media platforms on board quickly? Get the message out there.
Yes, indeed. And you're calling, as you put it quite succinctly, and I think well, you say what the police need to do in future when particularly a woman is reported missing in a city is to instigate almost immediately a full-scale 21st century media campaign, obviously taking in social media, taking in the newspapers, taking in television news, rolling news, radio stations like Talk Radio, because they all will react to a report of a young and healthy woman walking through a major city and suddenly disappearing. Now, I suspect that what the police do, what they did in this case, they go, oh, well, most of these people who go missing, they turn up again, shrug their shoulders, and they let vital minutes and vital hours go by. Now, I can understand that response, but perhaps from now on, they need to do what you're suggesting, and if it turns out it's a false alarm, so be it. But lives could be saved by what I think you're suggesting.
Well, Kevin, what I think needs to be done is in a situation like this, when her boyfriend reported her missing, she must have ticked every box that said, this is unusual, this is an emergency.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting overnight to then do our tweet, they should have pressed the button on a pre-planned template on an emergency, almost like a code red. Okay, this is serious. Time is of the essence. Don't sit around having meetings. Let's hit the button. It's ticked every box. Let's make it happen. So this can be done. I'll happily work with the police and be a liaison to the media to create the right template, because let's face it, this really could happen again one day, and it could be different. Those few hours, we now know that Cousins did actually murder Sarah that same night. So it wouldn't have actually saved her, but it would have obviously presented a whole different case in terms of collecting evidence. But in future, you never know. A victim may well be still alive when the media campaign can already be at maximum.
Well, given these circumstances, as you quite rightly say, a young, healthy, attractive woman walking across a busy city, late at night, suddenly disappears, taking 14 hours to react to a report that person has gone missing. That's just absolutely unacceptable. I mean, frankly, that's shoddy, isn't it?
It is crazy. I spoke to a very senior executive at one of the main national papers today about this campaign. And the first thing he said to me was that there's a crisis of communication between the police and the national press generally. He's saying there's a bit of a standoff. It dates back to Leveson and the phone hacking scandal. There's a breakdown of trust there, Whether that plays a part in it, I don't know. But this, to me, is quite simplistic. They need to look at it, create a brand new 21st century template on how to react in similar circumstances. It can be done.
Yeah, they're suspicious of the press. They're suspicious of the media. They always have been, but they need to put those suspicions aside when young women in particular, and we must stress it's not only young women, but when people go missing in these kind of circumstances, they need to put their suspicions aside and reach out to the media. As you quite rightly say, Rob, a templated system by which they react to a set of rules if the alarm is pressed, I think would be an excellent idea. And you're going to pursue this with the authorities.
Yeah, Martin Hewitt, he's the chairman of the National Police Chief Council. I think he's going to be my starting point. And let's hope they react and get on with it. I'm going to be talking to the police generally. I want to know the breakdown of what actually happened in those first 24 hours. You know, what the meetings. I don't see why this can't be revealed and there'd be, you know, a big investigation into it. Why not? Let's see what they did and what they can do better next time.
Yeah, you're quite right. You're quite right. I mean, you have uncovered another area where the police were seriously wanting. I'm going to just alert the listeners and the viewers to your Twitter handle so they can look at what you posted today. Rob is on at Rob McGibbon. So that's ROBMCGIBBON, at Rob McGibbon. If you go to his timeline on Twitter, it is laid out in full detail exactly what I was about to say happened after she went missing, but more to the point, what didn't happen. Rob, very good work, and I think you've hit upon something extremely important, and if we can help in any other way, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thanks so much for your time, mate.